You're listening to the Sixers Beat with your host, Derek Bodner, right here on LibertyBallers.com and LibertyBroadcast.co.
Welcome, everybody. I am Derek. I'm joined by Rich, and it is here. Basketball season now officially feels like it is back. How you doing, Rich?
I'm good. A free lunch signifies basketball being back?
No, vague injury updates that gave us no information and lead to only speculation means that basketball is back, at least in Sixers land. Before we get to that, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, and the TuneIn app. Also, check out the CLNS Media app where you can find ourselves, B-Ball Breakdown, Real Gem Radio, and Sam Vecini's Game Theory podcast. And if you can, please do leave us a rating or review. We do appreciate it. It helps us to get out to more Sixers fans. Getting on to the main story of yesterday's luncheon, which was a good lunch. I think of the places we've gone to, that was probably the best one. But more important to you, the fans, they're not really sure what's going on with JoJo. And, basically Brett Brown started off to be able to tell you specifically what I'm expecting to be able to get out of him next week. I'm not able to do that now. Rich, we're 5 days from training camp. What are they going to learn in the next 5 days that they haven't learned in the last 6 months?
Nothing. So I thought it was interesting when it was announced at the last minute that Colangelo would be joining Brown for his annual luncheon. I told you even before, I said this smells like that Brett doesn't want to deal with constant Embiid questions, because that was going to be the topic of the day. It was certainly not a comforting.
No. You pointed out the contrast in how they described Simmons' status and Embiid's status. With hold on, let me pull up, because these were some really crazy quotes. With Simmons, it was, he's playing 5-on-5 now. He's dominating with the gym. With Embiid,
that was after he said what you're about to say. Like he went going on and on with these vague, lengthy, somewhat contradictory updates. He just said, Ben's playing 5-on-5. He looks great, because he really couldn't talk anymore.
With Embiid, he's on a conservative path that will put him on a planned progression to have sustainable on-court success. Rich, what the fuck does that mean? Like, when I hear that, when you hear that and then you hear Simmons, well, you go, well, shit, what's wrong with Embiid? Like, why can you not have a positive update for us on a guy who had meniscus surgery 6 months ago? Rich, he tore his meniscus 8 months ago in January. What's going on? What's going on? And why? Now, I'm not even upset that something's going on. Why can't we know what's going on?
Yeah, and to add on, I mean, he's not playing 5-on-5, but they're also saying there's no setback. This is part of a hyper conservative plan, and like, come on. I mean, this is, I was going to make a political joke that I wouldn't have been able to pull up, but like, I'm sorry, this goes beyond being a conservative plan. Like something else has happened, or like, wow, they're just moving about as slow as you could ever imagine. They said, I mean, it's not about being ready for the first practice or the first game, and he will be out there on the first practice and first game. The question is how much, how little, if at all. I mean, I have to say it again, like it just doesn't make any sense, man.
I didn't catch that in real time, and I wish I did, because somebody needed to call him out on it. But when I went back that afternoon, and I started listening back to it, it's like, holy shit, man! Like, everything we talk about Bryan Colangelo, double speaking and covering all of his bases so he can't be held accountable later, throwing in that if at all at the end after what you just said in the first half of that sentence blew my mind. If you're confused by it, so am I.
And I believe once Embiid had the surgery, it said in the release with all of the doctors when they made their statements that he would be able to resume basketball activities in the summer. Now, and that largely has happened. Like back in June, he was doing these high intensity workouts that, he was dunking and shooting threes and running the floor. All you got to do is go to his Instagram to see what he was doing. And I'm going to say about August, that stopped. I don't know why. Maybe he just wanted to stop being on social media. But now they're at a point where they don't know if he can play 5-on-5. After what we saw from him in June, the fact that he's not ready to play 5-on-5, or they at least don't know he's ready to play 5-on-5 for training camp, is pretty mind-blowing.
And look, there's still a part of me that wonders, maybe they just didn't want to clear him towards the end of the summer. Maybe once they figured out they were going to hire this medical guy, Dr. Medina, they wanted to get his approval on the plan that they already put in place before they commit to it publicly. Any other organization that doesn't have the history this one does in the last year and a half, I'd take the optimistic view and go, okay, it still seems like a bit much for a meniscus tear, but I can kind of at least understand the reasoning behind it. But when you have what happened with Jahlil Okafor last fall, where, he was on load management, then he had mild soreness, and then in March he was shut down because of the injury he had operated on a year before. When you have all of the Ben Simmons being pushed back and pushed back and pushed back with no real details given on why he's being pushed back. When you have Joel Embiid, who had a bone bruise, which turned into a pre-existing meniscus that wasn't impacting his swelling at all, to his meniscus is slightly worse, to we're gonna shut him down for the season and operate on him. When you have Jared Bayless, who he's fine, he's coming back, he's fine, okay, well he's gonna play through it, and then you just find out through a press release that he had surgery after the fact. When you have all of this information and all this lack of information you're given in real time, only to kind of be hit over the head with, as an unsuspecting fan, with devastating news after the fact, I'm not just like, again, I think there's a possibility. I can certainly see it happening where next week Embiid's on the court, he's talking to the media, he says he's fine, he's playing in scrimmages, and we all forget about this, and this podcast looks stupid. They just right now don't deserve the benefit of the doubt to give us that vague bullshit and have us just be, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Here's a 7'2", 280 guy with bad feet, knees, and back. Just feed us that vague nonsense. We're fine with it. It doesn't work. Nobody is reassured after yesterday.
Fool me once, fool me, a million times. Like they're past that point where they're getting the benefit of the doubt. I guess I wouldn't call him the winner of yesterday, but at least somebody whose importance was basically stated out by Colangelo. Was this Dr. Daniel Medina, the guy they hired from Barcelona to basically, it seems like, run their sports science or athlete care department. I don't know exactly what he's going to be doing, but it seems like they're really going to lean on him to sort of lay out what JoJo's plan of attack is over the next couple of weeks. It's just, and again, maybe they're just looking for, as you said, like the thumbs up from him. Maybe they know that he's the best guy to push this forward. But I have to say, like, you hired the guy a couple days ago. That's a lot of pressure for this guy.
Right. It seems like, again, any other organization where we haven't been fooled so many times I could buy it. It just seems like one hell of a convenient excuse. Like, and why did it take so long to hire this guy? I don't know the ins and outs of Real Madrid's schedule. Maybe I think
Barcelona. Come on.
Oh, you're right.
That's
my bad. I've only written it about 6 times. I don't know the ins and outs of FC Barcelona's schedule. I think they're still playing. I don't follow the sport all that closely. But why now? Why did this take so long? If you felt like you needed that guy in that position, why didn't this happen over the summer when he had more of a say on Joel Embiid's rehab and Ben Simmons' rehab, although he's been cleared for a while now? Why now? And why is this holding up any real information? Why can't Brett Brown plan out his training camp that happens in, by the way, 5 days? Why is this all being held? It's very frustrating. And again, it's frustrating mostly because of past history. But you have to let past history influence how you react. Like you can't be blindsided 45 times in a row. Anyway.
It was the opposite of the media lunch last year, where Brett basically said he's healthy, but we're going to put him on a minutes restriction.
Right.
And here they said, well, we're not completely sure he's healthy, but there might not be a minutes restriction. He might play all 82 games.
And that was something I have the quote here somewhere. Hold on. Let me control F. Steep. Nobody cares about this. Okay. It's our anticipation that they will not be as steep, that they may not happen. We do not know that. But I feel like they certainly won't be at the level that they were at this year. And I think he meant last year by that. And that's in reference to his minute restrictions. So maybe he'll be relaxed a little bit. I still think he's not a guy who's going to be playing much more than 30 minutes a game anyway. So at 28, he was playing at the end of last year. That's probably about right. But it's just more flexibility in letting him, go out for longer stints, more flexibility in if they're in a very close game, if they go to overtime, you can go over that. I don't expect to ever see a world where Joel Embiid's playing 36, 37, 38 minutes on the regular. That's not just the way we handle these athletes with their bodies at this point, not with the wear and tear that a 7'2", 280 guy is going to have on his joints. But it'll be nice to have just a little bit more wiggle room. But you're right. The contradiction of, we have no idea if he's going to be ready, but hey, maybe no restrictions when he is. Like if he's not healed, or at least if he's not proven that he's able to go full steam ahead, it's really hard to say that.
Yeah. And then he was asked a question about a possible extension for JoJo. Colangelo was asked. And he said it was something that's being considered, and they're basically going to need to find some common ground. Well, like, if he's really not healthy at this point, I mean, there would need to be a lot of common ground
right.
that would need to be made up from the Sixers end.
Right. If you're going to tell me 50% of the contract is non-guaranteed, okay, that's a lot of common ground. But that seems a little bit unrealistic. Yeah, it is. It's there's BS in so many directions. I don't know which one to really trust. It is,
And look, I agree with you. Like, there is absolutely a chance that they're just being like extra careful, and next week he'll be playing in most of the scrimmages, and he'll be healthy, and he'll be upbeat, and he will play in the first preseason game, as Colangelo said, by saying he might not play. There is a world where that could happen, but it's just, we've been here too many times with these vague updates, and that just go terrible and turn into season enders that, like, I don't think you can take that in any sort of way as good news, what we heard yesterday.
No. Nope.
Maybe it's not bad news, but it's not good news.
No, and I think that's probably the best way to put it. All right, let me take one quick moment to tell our audience about Bombfell. If you're like me, shopping for clothes probably isn't at the top of your mind. You might also be like me in that your fashion sense is, well, not really one of your virtues. That's okay. Bombfell is here to make shopping for clothes easier for men. You start off by filling out a simple questionnaire to tell them about yourself, your measurements, your preferences, what category of clothes you're looking for, and how much you want to spend on each item. And you're then matched up with a personal dedicated stylist. That stylist will then put together a preview order, send it back to you, and give you a 48-hour window to make alterations. After that, the clothes are then shipped directly to your door. Try the clothes on, return what you don't want, and only pay for the items you keep. Let me tell you, the personal stylist is a great touch. Because you keep the same stylist for the entirety of your time with Bombfell, they really begin to get a feel for what works for you, making their recommendations better over time. After a couple of orders, not only did I feel like I had a real expert advising me, but I felt like I had someone who really understood what I was looking for. That combination of convenience and expertise makes for an incredibly valuable experience. I've been so happy with Bombfell that I negotiated a special offer exclusive for Sixers Beat listeners. For $25 off your first purchase, head on over to bombfell.com/SixersBeat. That's BOMBFELL.com/SixersBeat. Bombfell, open and close. All right, let's move on to something a little more cheerful. Ben Simmons. He was cleared for full 5-on-5. As Colangelo described it, he was dominating the gym. And they reiterated that they're going to put the ball in his hands in the half court. Brett Brown also did say a couple of interesting things, or at least put to rest a couple of debates that happen in Sixers land. He said that right now the starting lineup, he listed out who he thinks each person is going to defend. And he listed Fultz at the 1, Redick at the 2, Covington at the 3, Simmons at the 4, and Embiid at the 5, which for some reason there's been a debate, mostly because I think Bryan Colangelo said at once that Ben Simmons might defend point guards. Brett's been pretty against that from the jump. He did at one point say, he could defend threes. Right now it seems like, certainly with this lineup construction, he will be at the 4, which I think we've always been in agreement is where he should spend most of his time defending. And then also he said that Covington is, first of all, he's going to start and he wants some closing games too. And again, for some reason, this is a debate that happens quite frequently. Dario, Covington, who should start? And it seems like at least for now, that's put to rest.
Yeah. Brett's slotting of those players into their defensive roles were pretty much what we've been saying the entire summer. And not just us. I think everybody who has looked clearly at what Robert Covington brings to the team and just the Dario Saric, despite the fact that he came on strong at the end of last year, he unfortunately plays the same position as Ben Simmons. And sorry, that means that he's going to have a role off the bench. And we will see. Like, it's situational. There are games that Dario could close. But, for now, I think that's pretty safely your starting and your closing lineup. Now, as far as Simmons is concerned, this is something I pointed out in my piece on The Athletic today. It's just something that's built up over time that I've noticed. Brown has been very complimentary of Ben Simmons' defense.
Yeah.
When he was hurt last year, he maintained that he was his best defender at training camp before he got hurt on the last day. And he's doubling down now. What did he call him? He called him like an elite multi-positional defender. And right off the bat, he's going to be really good on defense. And that sort of perked my interest because, as we said, as far as from a playmaking standpoint, from a block, steals, and rebounding aspect, Simmons, his numbers were really good at LSU. He definitely made some plays happen. But when you watch the tape and some of just the lazy possessions, now part of that was he was in a really bad situation. There weren't many other good defenders on that team. He was having to play center in this lazy 2-3 zone from time to time as well. But he didn't really exert all that much effort on the defensive end. His rotations were bad. He never got in a defensive stance. All the things that it's going to take to be an elite multi-positional defender, he didn't really show. And Brett basically was like, look, this guy's going to be a really good defensive player from the jump. And I think that'll be interesting to track because that's asking a lot of Simmons right away. And I will say too, if he's good right away and Embiid is healthy, I know we're in the double if category there. They could be a really good defensive team.
Oh, if he is what Brett Brown is making him out to be with Covington and Embiid on the court together, and even a guy like Fultz who at least kind of like Simmons can force turnovers and get out on the break, they could be an elite defensive team.
Yeah.
That being said, those ifs I'm not buying right now. Sadly, I'm not buying either of those two ifs, and I really want to buy Embiid's health. But like you said, he certainly has that quick twitch in him where he can, he has, movements that very few people have. He has his quick hands. He has anticipation skills. He can do all of those things. And like you said, LSU was kind of tailor-made for a guy like him to take plays off and to space out defensively. That 2-3 zone, like you said, he should not have, he should have been in the middle of it because they had nobody else, but that's not his role going forward. But man, he just, his fundamentals are not there. His attention to detail is not there. His consistency is not there. And I kind of wonder if Brett is maybe trying to, really motivate him out of the jump, really telling him, look, we know what you can do offensively. We know what you can do with the ball. We know what you can do in transition. But you can be great at this too. You really need to focus. And I'm sure in the first part of his NBA career, that's going to be, if not the primary focus for Brown, one of the primary focuses for Brown. But look, when Brett said last year, we're going to run our offense through Embiid and we're going to go to him late in games, I thought, you're nuts. You're out of your mind. Not because I didn't think Embiid had that kind of talent, but he hadn't played basketball in 2 years. He didn't play that role at Kansas. He was really turnover prone, and one of those two things carried over. But he came out of the gate, and he was much more of what Brown described than I ever would have thought off the jump. Maybe that's the case with Simmons. Maybe Brown sees what we didn't. Maybe Brown knows that he can get him to buy in a way that he never has on that end. But it certainly is quite a big ask.
I mean, Embiid was standing too. I wouldn't ask a rookie to be a great defender right off the bat. Like they're gonna make mistakes too. Now, and this is an important point. Like Simmons and Fultz are two different types of rookies. Simmons, I'm expecting more from Simmons in terms of being able to handle the physicality of the NBA. And I mean, just little things like he's been through an NBA season, so he knows how to prepare himself. And it seems like from a physical standpoint, he's there. And that's the good news from yesterday, right? I think we're sort of bearing the lead here with Simmons because I got on a tangent about his defense. But the fact that Colangelo said that he's tearing up the competition like in the gym and he's 100%, that's great to see. Because I think like a lot of the time last year, Simmons' injury got lumped in with Embiid's. Like, oh, well, what type of restrictions is Simmons going to be on? And really, he didn't have the same type of injury history as Embiid. It never made sense. That was sort of a freak injury, and it just there really wasn't the type of sort of history to worry about Simmons with. So the fact that he's back to 100% and is going to be the athlete that we saw at LSU. I mean, God, Brett was calling him Usain Bolt running the floor yesterday, and I believe that. Like, you know, he's going to be a ton of fun to watch in transition. He also downplayed his jump shot a little bit. He said, like, look, we're focused on him finishing around the rim and working on his free throws. That's fine. Like, for now, I think the jumper's a big deal. But the fact that Ben Simmons is healthy and looks like he's playing well in the Sixers workouts, that's qualifies as pretty good news.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, look, if we get to, October 18th, I think is their first game. They don't play opening night. If we get to October 18th and Ben Simmons is healthy and not on a restriction, Joel Embiid is healthy and playing, I'm absolutely on cloud nine. Like, all this complaining that we may have done about the vague injury updates, that's fine. I'll move past that real quickly until it happens again, which I'm sure it will because that's the way this organization does things. But yeah, you're right. That's the big news. We can debate, the importance of his shooting. We can debate, and certainly I think finishing around the rim is something he has to work on, and I'm glad they are working on that. But we can debate the shooting. We can debate his defense and his day one contributions on that end. If he's healthy, things are great.
Just get on the floor.
Yep. Which I feel like is the mantra we've had for the last 5 years on this team. But one day we won't. We'll always worry about that. All right. There's something else about Simmons I wanted to bring up. Screw it. He did mention at one point, Brown, that one of the things he believes with Simmons, he's less worried about Simmons' shot, more worried about the people he puts around him. And he specifically said he doesn't think he can have another non-3-point shooter on the floor along with Simmons, which, of course, had forced somebody to ask about T.J. McConnell. At which point Brown, immediately flipped and said, how can you not play TJ? Yeah. He really sounded like a proud parent. It was, on the one hand, I think a lot of what we expressed on the last podcast, which is it feels absolutely absurd to not have TJ in your regular rotation, or at least as your backup. I think the way we framed it was in the top 9 of the rotation. But on the other hand, Brown really specifically said, I don't think we can have another non-shooter on the court. It was a little bit of a weird dynamic.
Yeah, and I mean, he also talked up Bayless and the great summer he has supposedly had, and his shooting ability and what that type of skill set how that can mesh with Simmons. I mean, basically, and look, I'm not too worried about this, but if you add up all of what Brett and Bryan said yesterday, the Sixers are going to play 11 guys, like at least 20 minutes per game, which that's not going to happen. There's, and he said this too. He said that the gym is going to help decide it. Basically, he's going to say what I see in practice and early in the preseason is going to decide the rotation. But like, I mean, when he specifically said, how can you not play TJ? You just answered why you can't play him.
Right.
He can't shoot, and he's not going to have the ball in his hands. And, like, look, TJ's defense, I think, is certainly better than basically all of the Sixers point guards. It's not at this crazy elite level, but he's at least an average defender at the point of attack. Probably a little better than that, to be honest.
It's and the other guys aren't. Yeah. That's how I would describe TJ's defense. Annoying as hell.
Yeah, and he's good at that. And that's a big part of his appeal. But it's just the worry is the trade-off on the offensive end. It's like, how can this guy contribute if he doesn't have the ball in his hands? Because he's proven to be a pretty good playmaker. Obviously, the Sixers offense hasn't been great over the past couple of years. That's not necessarily all of TJ's fault. But if you're taking the ball out of his hands, I'm not sure how he contributes. Like, if Ben has the ball on one side and TJ's standing on the other, like, where is he standing? 15 feet away from the basket? Like, I mean, the level of spacing is going to be a huge deal with Simmons and Fultz. And when it comes to TJ, like, there's a worry that he's going to absolutely make the floor more crowded for those guys. Now, I'm not, and by the way, like, it's like you said, I'm not, like, married to the idea that TJ will never play. Like, he has this intangible quality that the team just seems to love, and he plays good defense. There are ways to get him on the floor, but that's certainly a concern.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. And it also brings then into question how much you can play Justin Anderson if he hasn't made significant progress on that jump shot. And I do think that backup wing rotation with Anderson, that we talked about last time with Anderson, TLC, Stauskas, even Korkmaz a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially in this world with Simmons, with Embiid, where shooting is so important. Because, I mean, look, that's been outside of that one brief stretch at Virginia. That's been a real problem for Justin. That's been a real problem.
Oh, yeah. I mean, now he's lucky that he plays a position where there's less depth than, or not. Yeah, less depth, but not a core, one of the three core building blocks on the team. So maybe he can find a way to sneak a few more minutes. But yeah, like, I mean, Justin Anderson, who I think is still a pretty intriguing defender, like, I mean, he's been a 30 or sub 30% shooter his whole career. Now, I thought he played pretty well at the end of last year, but look, I mean, with Ben Simmons, like, he's going to get you the ball and you're going to have open shots. And if the other team doesn't have to respect you, like, yeah, I think there's a chance that somebody who might be a worse player in a vacuum than you, there's a chance where that guy can steal your playing time, whoever that is.
Yeah, it does. It's weird that we're talking about a position that has JJ Redick in as a spot they're not really settled in. Not being settled back in the day used to mean Elliot Williams. It's been a pretty drastic turnaround. All right, we'll wrap up the pod in a bit, but before we do, a quick word from Harry's. I've been a proud Harry's customer for almost a year now. First starting off with a free trial set, but now refilling my blades and ditching those overpriced brands you'd buy off the shelf. That's the heart of what Jeff and Andy set out to accomplish when they started Harry's. A great shave at a fair price, and that's why over 3 million customers have already switched. Harry's offers great quality as Jeff and Andy bought their own German factory with over 100 years of blade making experience, and they offer them at a great price, selling blades directly to you over the internet at half the price of competing brands. If you give Harry's a chance, I'm confident you'll be impressed as well, and Harry's is here to offer you a free trial offer. A $13 value you get for free when you sign up. You just cover shipping. Your free trial set includes a weighted, ergonomic razor handle, 5 precision-engineered blades, rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. To get your free trial set, go to harrys.com/SixersBeat right now. That's HARRYS.com/SixersBeat. All right, back to the pod. Jahlil Okafor, it sounds like he's not ready, or at least that he's not cleared for 5-on-5. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I mean, he lumped him in with Joel.
Yeah.
So
they're going to find out what they can get from him. Direct quote, soon I will be sitting down with him and his staff to get a roadmap on both Jahlil and Joel on what I should expect in relation to creating training camps. So we'll see about that. I don't believe anybody addressed whether or not Covington has been cleared for 5-on-5. Was that even brought up yesterday that you recall?
That wasn't brought up, but I'm pretty sure at one point one of the two of them said he was flying around the gym.
Yeah, he did.
So I would imagine he's probably ready to go here.
Then again, it seemed we would imagine Joel was probably ready to go too because he was flying up and down the gym too. So who knows with this squad? But a lot of question marks going into camp, which seems to be a running theme. Any other major takeaways that you had from that luncheon? I guess one other thing that which ties directly into all of the question marks. Brett Brown basically announced that he wasn't going to be providing injury updates before and after games. They were going to come from press releases from the team, and then on major situations, surgery-type situations, they were going to then bring in Dr. Medina, which brings up the question, well, if Brett's not addressing injury questions, and Dr. Medina is only addressing major surgery, what happens, like, when we want an update on how's Joel progressing to a return, or how's Bayless progressing to a return, or what's the status of that? Is he feeling any pain? You can't ask a press release that, and if they're not going to make Brett available, there's really nobody that we can go to.
Yeah, and I mean, you can tell Brett's just tired of providing updates, which I'm not sure, most of the time I'm not sure he completely has the full understanding of what's going on. I mean, I'm sure they brief him, but I mean, the guy's got to coach a basketball team too, so like.
Oh, but the problem is he's the only one that's ever made available to the media on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So we can't talk to.
Yeah, and this isn't fixing that problem if you're not having anybody replace him in that role.
It's there's almost a disdain among that organization to provide any updates, to even be asked about the status of players. It's a little awkward, and with a fan base that doesn't really trust their willingness or the accuracy with which they update us anyway, not being able to have anyone that we can really ask questions, I don't think that's going to fix their problem. But
it's going to fix their problem? If Joel Embiid plays 70 games or 60 games, right? That will fix their problem. Unfortunately, their first chance to prove that didn't really go over all that well.
No, it didn't. All right, so we got Media Day coming up on Monday, training camp next week. Exactly what that means, I don't really know. We'll see. It's still, you're sitting there. They have all that cap space, which we all assume is going to go to Covington. That can't happen until November 15th. You have the possibility of an Embiid extension that could happen relatively soon. In fact, it has to happen really within the next 3+ weeks by October 16th. What's your gut on that? Do you think that happens? It seemed like Bryan was sending out a message when he said, unless there's common ground found, and there has to be common ground found. It almost seemed like he was sending a message out to Joel's representatives.
Yeah. So you probably had it about 50-50 last time, right? That's what you said. I would probably have moved it down a little bit after that. Like, it does seem like he's interested in trying to get a discount if Joel and his camp would be amenable to that, but it seems like they're fighting back a little bit, which, like, I'm not privy to what the exact conversations are, but they should. I mean, this guy is an amazing talent, and, like, look, this could be his only chance to have a major payday. So, they're not gonna, like, completely, this isn't like Tim Duncan signing for his last year in San Antonio. Like, this is Joel's chance to really cash in. And I mean, with his talent level and his injury history, it makes these negotiations, there's a lot of high stakes here. And, it seems like Bryan on the same token, like he does not want to commit money to somebody he knows might be injured for a lot of the time. So yeah, I think he's trying to fish for that Steph Curry deal, whatever that is.
Yep. Yeah. And I've said before, I think that might be more likely to be a max type deal with a portion of that unrestricted than just saying, okay, I'm going to set my ceiling of my earning potential at $18 million. I'm not sure Joel Embiid's representatives are going to agree to that, but I think if you can play around with the guaranteed amount, that might be the way to go. But I mean, like you said earlier, there's no chance you go out and you give him a max type contract at this stage. So I do agree with Colangelo in that a common ground is going to have to be found. I think that's a pretty obvious statement on all negotiations. But we'll see. And I think if that happens, it'll be right up at that October 16th deadline. All right. I think that's probably about it, unless you have anything else to bring up.
No. I mean, lottery for him, but who cares? I mean, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, Colangelo was pretty non-committal. He basically said, I think there are improvements that could be made, but I haven't seen the proposal, so I don't really want to comment on if I support it until I see the proposal, which, when's that being voted on? I think that's next week, isn't it?
Yeah, end of September.
Yeah, so he might want to, take a look at that. Running out of time. We all have a lot of thoughts on lottery reform. We don't need to relitigate all of those, but I don't think it's really fixing what needs to be fixed. But yeah, here we go. We're here. Vague injury updates means basketball season is back. Media day on Monday and training camp on Tuesday really means basketball season is back. And we are now just a couple of, 2 weeks away from the start of the preseason, which Joel Embiid will play some, maybe, if at all. We don't know.
If at all.
But thanks for jumping on, Rich. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.
All right, thanks, Derek.
You've been listening to the Sixers Beat right here on LibertyBallers.com and LibertyBroadcast.co.